The first time she rolled her eyes at me, I brushed it off. It was a family dinner I'd cooked from scratch. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, her favorite apple pie. As I placed the dishes on the table, I waited for a simple thank you, or even a smile. Instead, she glanced at her son, my husband, and scoffed. Then came the words that hit me like a slap. "She's just a housewife, right?" She didn't say it to me directly, but loud enough that I heard it. Her tone was sharp, dismissive, dripping with judgment. My husband just awkwardly laughed and changed the subject. I forced a smile, trying to swallow the lump in my throat. That moment stayed with me. It wasn't just the words, it was the way she said it, like I was beneath her. I told myself not to take it personally, but that wasn't the last time. She kept making small jabs, disguised as jokes, every time she visited. "What do you even do all day? Must be nice having no real job. Don't you get bored not contributing?" Each comment chipped away at my self-worth, and my husband never defended me. He just looked down at his phone or act like he didn't hear it. One afternoon, she dropped by unannounced. I was cleaning the kitchen, and my toddler was tugging at my leg, crying. She looked around with judgment in her eyes and muttered, "If you can't handle this little mess, maybe you're not cut out for this either." That was the day I realized she didn't just dislike me. She didn't respect me, not as a wife, not as a mother, not as a person, but I stayed polite. I stayed silent. I tried to be the bigger person, thinking my patience would earn me peace. It didn't. Her remarks became bolder, more cruel. At dinner with extended family, she once joked, "He could have married someone with ambition, but hey, at least she cooks." Everyone laughed. I didn't. My eyes locked with hers for a second, and she smiled like she'd won something. That night, I cried in the shower. I felt small, invisible, like I had no value because I wasn't bringing home a paycheck. But the truth was, I held the house together. I kept everything running. I loved her son deeply, and I gave my all to our home and child. Still, that wasn't enough for her. Then I started observing how she controlled conversations, how she made my husband feel guilty for spending time with me instead of her, how she manipulated situations to make me look bad. Slowly, I realized this wasn't just disrespect. It was a power play, and I was done being the passive one. I started planning, not for confrontation, but for clarity. I documented her behavior. I had quiet conversations with my husband, showing him what he hadn't noticed. And then I waited for the perfect moment. Because if she wanted to see what just a housewife was capable of, she was about to find out. At first, her comments were subtle, like little jabs hidden under a fake smile. But over time, they turned sharp. So sharp, I felt them slice through my confidence like a knife. One morning, she walked in while I was folding laundry with my toddler playing beside me. Without even saying hello, she looked around and said, "You must love watching Netflix all day." She said it casually, like it was just a funny thought, but the way her eyes narrowed told me exactly what she meant. I was lazy. I was wasting my life. I stood there holding a towel in my hand, unsure how to respond. My husband was in the next room, but he didn't say anything. Again, I didn't even own a Netflix account. My days were packed with cleaning, cooking, diapers, grocery runs, and barely a minute to breathe, but none of that seemed to matter to her. In her eyes, I was doing nothing. A few days later, we were at dinner when she leaned across the table and smiled sweetly. "You're lucky he provides everything. Not every woman gets to live like this." She said it like it was a compliment, but it wasn't. It was another reminder that I was living off her son, that I hadn't earned any of this. I looked at my husband, hoping he'd speak up, but he just stared down at his plate, chewing in silence. I wanted to scream. I wanted to shout that I gave everything I had to this home, to our child, to him, but I said nothing, just smiled politely while my heart sank deeper. Her favorite question started popping up more often. "When are you going to get a real job?" Sometimes she'd ask it during small talk. Other times she'd just blurt it out like it was an innocent curiosity, but it wasn't. She knew exactly what she was doing. Every word she spoke was meant to remind me that in her eyes I wasn't enough, that staying home, raising her grandchild, running the household, that didn't count. I started feeling ashamed, even when I knew I shouldn't. I began questioning myself. Was I really not doing enough? Was my work invisible? I'd wake up early to make breakfast, handle the morning mess, entertain a fussy toddler, prep dinner, wash laundry, clean rooms, and still hear her voice in my head at night asking, "When are you going to get a real job?" One day she said it again, loudly in front of guests, and I saw it, the smug look on her face. She loved making me feel small. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about me not working. It was about her needing to feel superior, and the more I stayed silent, the more power I gave her. Something inside me shifted that night. I wasn't going to argue. I was going to show her, silently, smartly, and completely, what just a housewife could really do. She made it no secret who her favorites were. Every time the family gathered, she'd light up talking about her other daughters-in-law. One was a dentist, always dressed sharp, always busy with patients. The other was a banker, handling big money and traveling for work. She'd praise them like they were queens. "Did you hear? She just got promoted again. Her clinic is doing so well." She would beam with pride, her voice full of admiration. And then there was me, just the woman raising her son's child and running the entire household. The one who cooked for the family dinners, cleaned up afterward, and made sure everything ran smoothly while getting zero recognition. She never asked me how I was doing or how my day went. No interest in how I was raising her grandchild or what I did to keep our home in order. It was like, in her mind, I didn't count. My job didn't come with a title or a salary, so it didn't matter. At one family event, I overheard her saying, "At least my other sons married strong, ambitious women." She said it with her hand on the banker's shoulder and didn't even glance in my direction. I smiled through it, but inside I was breaking. She'd invite the other daughters-in-law out for coffee, girls' days, spa outings. I was rarely included. If I was, it felt forced, like I was there out of obligation. They'd talk about work projects and office politics, and whenever I tried to join in, she'd cut me off with a look or change the subject. I knew she saw me as the one who didn't achieve anything, like I somehow settled for less. She didn't see the hours I spent rocking a crying baby to sleep, budgeting every dollar to keep our home steady, or the nights I stayed up late ironing shirts and planning meals. The hardest part wasn't her words. It was how my husband didn't see it. Or maybe he saw it and chose to ignore it. He thought I was overthinking, being too sensitive. "She doesn't mean it like that," he'd say. But I knew exactly what she meant every time she introduced me last. Every time she talked about the other two, like they were gold and I was invisible. I started to realize something important. She didn't need a reason to dislike me. She just needed someone to feel better than. And I was the easy target. Quiet, kind, always helping, never fighting back. But what she didn't know was that I wasn't weak. I was just choosing peace for now. She saw me as just a housewife, but I was about to remind her that the woman she overlooked was the one holding her son's life together. And when the time came, she'd wish she had respected me before I stopped caring what she thought. Every time she made a rude comment, I looked at him, hoping, just hoping he'd say something. But he never did. He'd either stay quiet or pretend he didn't hear it. When I brought it up later, he'd shrug and say, "It's just how she is," or "She didn't mean it like that." And every time he said those words, it felt like another little piece of me cracked inside. Because I wasn't just being insulted, I was being abandoned by the one person who promised to stand beside me. There were moments when I needed him the most, not to fight, but to simply acknowledge what was happening, like the time his mother called me lazy in front of his cousins. She laughed afterward like it was a joke. I looked at him, hoping he'd say, "That's not okay." But instead he laughed too, nervous, awkward, but still laughed. I smiled with my lips, but my heart, it felt like someone had stepped on it. I started questioning myself. Was I making too much out of it? Maybe I was too sensitive, but deep down I knew I wasn't. I wasn't asking for much, just for him to say, "Hey, that's not fair," or even just, "I see you." But he didn't. He'd brush it off every time. "She's old school. She doesn't know any better. Let it go." And with every excuse he made for her, he made it clear my feelings weren't worth defending. One night, after another dinner where she praised the other daughters-in-law and acted like I was invisible, I finally broke. I told him everything. How her words were slowly crushing me, how I felt small and unwanted in my own home. I didn't yell, I didn't accuse, I just let it out, hoping he'd finally see what I was carrying. He sighed and said, "You're overthinking it. She doesn't hate you." That hurt more than anything she ever said, because in that moment I realized he wasn't going to stand up for me. Not now, maybe not ever, and I stopped expecting him to. It was a quiet shift. I stopped waiting for him to be my shield. I stopped hoping he'd confront her. I started putting my energy into myself, into my child, into slowly, quietly building something she couldn't touch and he couldn't ignore. I began documenting everything, her words, his silence. I started finding my voice, not by yelling, but by planning. I stopped begging for respect and started preparing to demand it in a way no one could dismiss. His silence didn't just break my heart, it opened my eyes. I realized I was on my own. But that didn't mean I was weak. It meant I was about to get smart. I was done waiting to be defended. Now I was going to defend myself in a way none of them would see coming. Every time she made a rude comment, I looked at him, hoping, just hoping, he'd say something. But he never did. He'd either stay quiet or pretend he didn't hear it. When I brought it up later, he'd shrug and say, "It's just how she is," or "She didn't mean it like that." And every time he said those words, it felt like another little piece of me cracked inside. Because I wasn't just being insulted. I was being abandoned by the one person who promised to stand beside me. There were moments when I needed him the most, not to fight, but to simply acknowledge what was happening. Like the time his mother called me lazy in front of his cousins. She laughed afterward like it was a joke. I looked at him, hoping he'd say, "That's not okay." But instead he laughed too. Nervous, awkward, but still laughed. I smiled with my lips, but my heart, it felt like someone had stepped on it. I started questioning myself. Was I making too much out of it? Maybe I was too sensitive. But deep down, I knew I wasn't. I wasn't asking for much. Just for him to say, "Hey, that's not fair." Or even just, "I see you." But he didn't. He'd brush it off every time. "She's old school. She doesn't know any better. Let it go." And with every excuse he made for her, he made it clear. My feelings weren't worth defending. One night after another dinner, where she praised the other daughters-in-law and acted like I was invisible, I finally broke. I told him everything, how her words were slowly crushing me, how I felt small and unwanted in my own home. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse. I just let it out, hoping he'd finally see what I was carrying. He sighed and said, "You're overthinking it. She doesn't hate you." That hurt more than anything she ever said, because in that moment I realized he wasn't going to stand up for me. Not now, maybe not ever, and I stopped expecting him to. It was a quiet shift. I stopped waiting for him to be my shield. I stopped hoping he'd confront her. I started putting my energy into myself, into my child, into slowly, quietly building something she couldn't touch and he couldn't ignore. I began documenting everything, her words, his silence. I started finding my voice, not by yelling, but by planning. I stopped begging for respect and started preparing to demand it in a way no one could dismiss. His silence didn't just break my heart, it opened my eyes. I realized I was on my own, but that didn't mean I was weak. It meant I was about to get smart. I was done waiting to be defended. Now I was going to defend myself, in a way none of them would see coming. While she spent her days criticizing me, assuming I was just wasting time, I was quietly building something behind the scenes. Every night, after I put my child to bed and the house fell silent, I opened my laptop. Not for Netflix, not for scrolling, but to study. I had enrolled in an online program months ago. I never told anyone, not even my husband. I knew they wouldn't understand, or worse, they'd try to stop me. So I kept it a secret. During the day, I played the role they expected, cooking, cleaning, folding laundry. But at night, I was a student, slowly piecing together a new version of myself. Assignments, quizzes, endless reading. I did it all while the rest of the house slept. Some nights I was exhausted, but I kept going. I reminded myself why I started. I was done being invisible. I wanted to create a life where I didn't need validation from anyone. I began freelancing under a pen name. Small jobs at first, proofreading, content writing, virtual assistants. It wasn't glamorous, but it was mine. And slowly my resume grew. I remember once, she came into the room and saw me on the laptop. She rolled her eyes and said, "Must be nice watching videos all day." I smiled and said nothing. She had no idea I was in the middle of an online exam. She had no clue that I had already completed 2 certifications and had 3 clients overseas. She thought I was still just existing, but I was quietly becoming someone she could never control again. While she was busy worshiping her other daughters-in-law, the banker and the dentist, I was learning how to become financially independent. Every dollar I earned from freelancing, I saved. I created a new bank account in my name only. No one knew it existed. I wanted to make sure that when the time came, I would never have to beg for help, that I'd have choices. There was something incredibly powerful about keeping it all to myself. Not because I wanted to lie, but because I wanted to protect my peace. I was building strength, not out loud, but in silence. Every mean comment she made pushed me harder. Every moment of disrespect became fuel. I didn't need her to believe in me. I believed in myself, and that was enough. She still thought I was just folding laundry, that I was wasting time, waiting for life to happen. But what she didn't know was that while she was tearing me down with words, I was building something solid, something unstoppable. One night at a time, one project at a time. I was becoming the version of myself that she never saw coming. And I wasn't doing it for revenge. I was doing it for freedom, for dignity, for the woman I knew I truly was beneath all her insults. She had no idea what was coming. The day I got the email, I froze. I stared at the screen, rereading the subject line over and over again. We're excited to offer you the position of creative director. I couldn't breathe for a second. My hands shook. It felt unreal. A six-figure salary, full benefits, and the best part, remote work, no commute, no office politics, just me, my laptop, and a dream job I had worked for in complete silence. No one saw the late nights, the freelance projects, the endless revisions. But I knew. I had earned every bit of it. I remember walking into the kitchen that morning. My mother-in-law was sitting at the table, sipping her tea like she ran the world. She glanced at me and said, "Don't forget to vacuum today. It's looking dusty." I smiled. She had no idea I had just been hired by a top-tier design firm overseas. No clue that I was now making more than her precious banker daughter-in-law. To her, I was still just the girl folding towels and stirring curry. And I let her think that. I nodded and said, "Sure, I'll take care of it." Inside, though, I was on fire. This wasn't just a job. This was a door opening to a life I had only dared to imagine. I had applied under my pen name. My portfolio was clean, sharp, professional. Everything I couldn't afford to be in this house. It took months to get here. Countless interviews, countless rejections. But I never gave up. I kept working, kept learning. I knew something better was coming, and now it had arrived. Later that afternoon, my husband came home. I told him I got a job. Not the full details, just that it was remote and paid well. His reaction? A shrug. "That's nice," he said, barely looking up from his phone. No excitement, no pride, just indifference. But that was okay. I wasn't looking for applause. I had clapped for myself already. I didn't tell my mother-in-law anything. She didn't deserve to know. Not yet. Let her keep thinking I was aimless. Let her keep making snide comments about real women with real careers. I had something better than her approval. I had independence, financial freedom, and a future she could never take credit for. That evening, while they watched TV in the living room, I opened my laptop in the bedroom, logged into my new company account, and started onboarding. My name was now on a company website listed with other top creatives. I had a company email, a benefits package, scheduled meetings with teams across the globe, and they respected me, not for who I was married to, not for how well I folded clothes, but for my talent, my vision, my work. She still thought I was just a housewife. She had no idea I was now a creative director, and I planned to keep it that way. For now, let her keep underestimating me, because when the time came, she wouldn't know what hit her. She showed up without warning, as always, said she was just dropping by, but I knew better. She wanted to snoop, to pick apart my life and remind me of everything she thought I lacked. I greeted her politely, offered tea, and sat with her briefly in the living room. She looked around with that usual judgmental scan, eyes narrowing like she was looking for dust or disappointment. Then right on cue, she leaned back with that fake smile and said, "So, how's the housewife life? Still folding laundry and watching soaps all day?" I just smiled. My heart didn't race this time. I didn't feel small or ashamed like I used to. I didn't even flinch. I stood up calmly and said, "Let me show you something." She raised an eyebrow but followed me, confused. I walked down the hallway past the kitchen and opened the frosted glass doors to my home office. It was sleek, clean, modern, a full setup, dual monitors, ring light, vision board, and a wall-mounted calendar filled with strategy sessions, design reviews, and international meetings. I walked behind my desk, sat down, and picked up my phone. She was still standing there, stunned, mouth slightly open. I hit the dial button and called the house line. Her phone rang in her purse. She looked even more confused, then slowly answered. "Hello?" she said. I looked straight at her and said, "Hi, this is the creative director speaking. I wanted to check in and see how the housewife life is treating you today." Silence. Her eyes darted around the office like it was some movie set. She took in the awards on the shelf, the custom nameplate on the desk, the high-end equipment. She blinked fast, like she couldn't believe what she was seeing. I continued calmly. "I work from here. I manage a global creative team. I lead campaigns. I earn more now than your banker and dentist daughters-in-law combined." She stammered something, maybe a joke, maybe a denial, but I didn't let her get far. I leaned forward and said, "You've spent years mocking me, years acting like being a mother and wife made me lesser. But while you were busy judging, I was busy building." Her mouth moved, but no words came. For once, she had nothing to say. Then I stood up and opened the office door wider. "Feel free to look around or sit down, but if you ever call me just a housewife again, I'll ask you to leave and not come back." She sat down quietly. No snide comments, no smug looks, just silence. For the first time, she saw me not as the girl who married her son, but as a woman who didn't need anyone's permission to shine. She had tried to define me for years, but now I had rewritten the whole story, and I hadn't even raised my voice. She stood there frozen, still trying to make sense of the office she had just stepped into. Her eyes scanned every corner, the dual monitors, the branding awards, the whiteboard filled with campaign plans. And then, in the most baffled tone, she blurted out, "I thought you were just doing dishes." The same voice that had mocked me for years now sounded small, almost uncertain. I didn't react right away. I just looked at her with a calm smile and said, "No, I was just building a business in silence." Her face changed instantly. Confusion, then disbelief, then that uncomfortable silence that follows when someone realizes they've misjudged you completely. I could tell she didn't know what to say next. For years, she had labeled me as the unambitious one, the lazy one, the one who stayed home and lived off her son. Every passive-aggressive comment, every backhanded compliment, every insult disguised as just being honest. She had spent years making me feel small. But while she assumed I was in the kitchen all day, I was at my desk. While she thought I was wasting time on Netflix, I was studying, learning, applying, designing. While she thought I had nothing going for me, I was quietly stacking projects, building a portfolio, and networking under a professional alias. She had no idea how hard I had worked because I never told her. I never needed her applause. I stepped aside and let her walk through the room. She moved slowly, like she was in a dream. She glanced at the family vision board I had created for a client that got published in a national magazine. She looked at the branded mock-ups framed on the wall, mock-ups from campaigns I had led for big names she definitely knew. I told her, "I didn't just get a job. I built my own lane. I made sure I'd never need to ask anyone for anything again." Her lips parted, but nothing came out. She sat down quietly on the guest chair in front of my desk, not even pretending to be smug now. And it hit me. This was the first time she was seeing me for who I really was. Not the quiet daughter-in-law she could insult freely, but a woman who had created her own empire, one silent step at a time. She finally whispered, "Why didn't you ever tell us?" I looked at her and said, "Because you never asked. You already had your story written about me. You weren't listening. You were too busy talking." The room stayed quiet after that. For once, there were no more jabs, no sarcastic questions, just silence. But it was the kind of silence that tasted like victory. It's almost laughable now. After everything that happened, after years of looking down on me, she now brags about me. Every chance she gets, she's telling people how proud she is of me. "My daughter-in-law is so successful," she says with that fake smile, her voice practically shouting it to anyone within earshot. It's like she's trying to convince everyone, including herself, that she's been on my side all along. But I don't need her praise. I've learned to live without it. And to be honest, it feels hollow. You see, for all her loud compliments, I'll never forget how much louder her mockery used to be. I won't forget the way she looked at me with disdain when I was just doing what I had to for my family. The way she'd ask, "So when are you going to get a real job?" Or how she'd roll her eyes every time I mentioned something I was proud of. I can still hear her voice when she said, "Just a housewife, huh?" It stung, but I kept my head down and worked in silence. That was the best revenge. And now? Now she has to pretend like she always believed in me. It's easy for people to forget the past when they're trying to rewrite the story. But I remember it all. I remember her condescending tone, the way she dismissed me. She thought I was stuck in some boring, insignificant life. She underestimated me, but that was her mistake, one I turned into my strength. Because while she was busy judging, I was building something bigger than her narrow view could ever imagine. Now she tells everyone how proud she is of the woman I've become. She brags about the successful career I've built, the high-profile job I have. She gushes about how I've found my passion, like she was there supporting me all along. But I know the truth. She wasn't there. She didn't believe in me. She laughed at me. She tried to crush my spirit. And yet here I am, thriving in a way she never saw coming. I guess she thinks if she praises me loud enough, it'll somehow erase the years of mockery. But I'm not fooled. Her words may be louder now, but I'll never forget how she used to make me feel small. It doesn't matter how many times she brags about me or how many people she tells that she's proud of me, because I know the truth. I wasn't just a housewife, I was underestimated. And that was the best thing that ever happened to me. Because the second she thought I had no potential was the moment I began to prove her wrong. So while she may want to rewrite history now, I'll always remember how loud her mockery was and how silent she is now. If you enjoyed the revenge story, like, share, comment, and subscribe to World Revenge Stories, where every tale is a new saga of revenge.